Yo, everyone, welcome back to Life of a Businessman. This is episode number 1. I did an intro last week, but thank you guys who listened to the last episode, and this one is going to be a banger as well. So, firstly, I don't have any sponsors for this podcast, but I'm going to change things up. Instead of doing sponsors for this podcast, I'm going to do shout outs. I'm really passionate about small businesses and people up and coming in the industries that they're in. And just as a good gesture of mine, I'm changing the script. There will not be any sponsors on here. There will be shout outs. And if you are a small business or a listener of mine, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be going to do shout outs at the start of every podcast like this, promoting you, promoting your product, and whatever it is that you are either selling or trying to promote as a business owner, small business, large business, whatever it may be. I'm here to support you guys. Thanks for listening. But our very first podcast sponsor or shout out is Hannon Realty. If you're on the Gold Coast and you're looking for a luxury real estate agent, please reach out to Hannon. Hannon's been around in the Gold Coast space for quite a while now, built a reputation up, and he is up and coming in this space. And I know that in the next 5 years, you'll see Hannon Realty everywhere. So shout out to him. I'll put his details either up here, down here somewhere. Go support brother. But without further ado, let's just jump straight back into the podcast. So it's important that you guys know and understand who I am, what I'm about, what my values are, and how I even got to, where I am now. It's a long story, and I had some really interesting questions. I went and just seen Bedros Koulios yesterday, and I had Ethan with me, so the bro of mine, and he said, how did you even get into entrepreneurship? What was the thing that, catapulted you or push you and drive you to want to be, I guess, entrepreneurial? For me, I didn't even know what the fuck entrepreneur meant. I had no idea. Someone said entrepreneur to me like 10 years ago, I would be like, what is that? Like, what do they do? So I was very new to this space, and I'll talk a little bit about what I do now, and then we'll roll into, how I started out. So currently right now, I have an AI automation business here in the Gold Coast. This is a passion. It's something I've had, on my heart for a very long time. I just didn't know what it was. I always found myself, I've had a couple of, quite a few other businesses, some amazing, some shit, as everyone's journey goes like that. And I always found myself in the back end operations of businesses, even businesses that were not mine. I was always trying to break them down, build customer flows, build like the operations of everything, what technology you're using, what software you're using. And that's really where, I guess, passion for this space, grew out. And at that time, I didn't really understand and know what it was. I just was like, I always got stuck, worried about that stuff. And I was always just like, my head was always there, ticking over, trying to figure out how to automate things, trying to make things better, make things flow, grab this software. And it was just like, and it actually, it fucked me a lot because I didn't focus on sales and businesses and stuff like that. And there's a few things that I missed because I was always just so head focused on these areas. But for me, I always had this passion. I'm like, look, I can't make I was like, as a young kid, didn't grow up with much. It had more than what we needed, but at the same time, we didn't have a lot compared to some other families. But I was like, well, I can't make a money machine, right? Because you're going to go to jail and that's illegal. But I was like, shit, what about a business that just like runs and it is autonomous? And I always had this dream, but I didn't know what AI was then. But I was like, look, if I can build a business that's just so fluid and has such good systems, that is a money machine. And that's where my passion for systems and operations started. And doing the business that I do now, it was one of those things where I kind of found like, this is exactly what I love doing, because I love going into someone's business and just being like, okay, breaking it all down, getting it going, scaling it up. And for me, I always found myself like, once it was going and it was scaled up, I was bored. I was like, shit, on to the next one. Like, what else have I got? And I started fishing around, but I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know if that was even a job, or I was like, what the fuck? Like, is that a job? Can I just go around and like put some, get people's systems and operations and make them better? On the whole, in recent years, AI automation has become a massive thing, and it's going to be even bigger. And I'm just at the start of it, and many people jumping into the space are just at the start of it now. I started about a year and a half solidly in this space, but before that, I tried this business, and it was with Zapier and like a few other like softwares at the time. I did get told to fuck off quite a bit because people didn't know what automation. It wasn't called AI automation. It was just called automation. And now that AI came out, a lot of people were going, okay, I remember when I first started, I was like, what do we call this? Automation. And it was just like this thing. I found AI automation on YouTube. Shout out to Liam Otley, actually. He's one of the guys that I had it was a dream that died. A few years ago, I tried to do this with a construction business, or not about 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I don't think it was there at the time, or the market wasn't there. People didn't understand it. Lo and behold, I watched a video by Liam Otley as a young dude, and it sparked and reunited my passion and dream for it again, because the thing that I always wanted and the technology that I needed to fulfill this was there. And I watched this hour and a half YouTube video, and I just was like, it's here, it's ready. The thing that it just made so much sense to me. So shout out to Liam Motley, man. I owe that dude a thank you at the minimum, because it got me back on the horse, and I decided to go back into this space again and really carve my name out. So if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be in the AI space. So cheers. Well, just FYI, it's like 5 a.m. in the morning here as well. So I get up at 4 a.m. So that's my first coffee. But how did I even get into entrepreneurship? This is a story I had in the car yesterday. Me and Ethan were speaking about it, and it took me a little while to think about, what my first, dabble in this space was. And I would have to go back till when I was 12 to 13 years old, right? I grew up in the country, a small town called Quilby. Not a lot out there. I'm talking, well, to give you clarity, the next place from us is about 45 minutes. If you're doing, 110 to 120 Ks, a little bit less, depending on your speed limit. That place is the furthest town from the sea in Australia. So just to give you clarity, there ain't fuck all out there. It's the middle of nowhere. It is the desert. It is the Australian desert. There's not much more outback and more remote that you can get in Australia than where I grew up. So if you're a country boy and you're from out in the sticks here, you're actually a city boy. But it was where I grew up, right? It was the Wild West out there. It was I guess the rules are different in the bush. And that's one thing I had coming to the Gold Coast or coming to a big town like this was massive, like, society shift for me. I had no idea like how things operated here. It was scary. I just jumped into this town and I was like, fuck it, whatever, I'm here now, let's just crack on. But the way things worked were very different. So we'll get onto that as we go. But how did I get into the entrepreneurial, space? Well, it was my first apple. I had a job when I was young. I didn't actually have a job. I was 12, 13 years old. I was in a place called Colomola, about 4 hours from Quilby. And so I worked in the shearing sheds. My family worked in the shearing sheds, right? And there was this moment where I was there, and there's a thing called a bale press, right? And you press wool into the bale, right? And I was like so young, I couldn't even reach like into the thing. I had to get a milk crate and put it in there. And what happened was, there's one of the wool presses there, and he decided he would give me $10 each bale I pressed, because it was helping him out. We had 2 presses there. He brought his own. And I was pressing 10 bales a day on bellies and pieces. So if you're in the shearing sheds and that's a big ass shed, there must be a lot of sheep getting shorn. I think there's like 15 shearers there. Anyway, so I'm there. It's like 8 weeks, 7, 8 weeks, whatever it was. And I'm there doing 10 of these bales a day, earning, $100 a day. So my younger brother was there as well. He was out fishing, riding motorbikes, doing whatever he was doing. This is a really cool story because I haven't told this to anybody. So what happened was, I was there, 8 weeks go by, the end of the shed cuts out. And this man, true to his word, I cannot remember his name. He had an Essendon tattoo. I should know his name on his shoulder, but the country is very like that. If you say you're getting $100, you're getting $100. You say you're getting a punch in the face, you're getting a punch in the face. That's it. There's no filter out there. It is what it is. And everyone's straight up. I finished this shearing shed, right? I'm 12. I'm not even 12. I might be like 11. I can't remember. I definitely was in year 7 anyway. End of the shed cuts out. He walks up to me, and I'd been there. So he gave me about $6,000 cash, like in $100 notes. And me, what do you do? What are you going to do? You little kid, $6,000 cash. Back then too. This is This is 20 years ago, 19 years ago. So you give a little kid $6,000 cash. What the fuck do you think he's gonna do? But I earned that shit too. I was there all day working my ass out. I couldn't even reach in there. I had to get a milk crate to put it in. So I remember being this little kid. Guy whips out just a bang of wad of cash as a little kid. I'm just like, grab it straight away. I think I shoved it in front of my pants and I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Anyway, the shed finishes. We're driving back home. My brother was in the front seat in front of me. I was in the back seat, obviously illegally. You're not meant to be in there. I was just laying down on the stuff. Country roads, you can do whatever you want out there. And I was just laying there. My brother's like, oh, you worked all this time. You work. You didn't get paid, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I just like pulled down grabbed this money out of my pants and just like flipped it around in the car, and I was just like waving this like just wad of cash at him. And my old man grabs the rear vision mirror and he's like, where'd you get that fucking money? Because he's like, did I steal it or something? But no, I was like, no, I got work. He paid me. He paid me what I was worth. And in that instance, my brother, he was young, he broke down, he was like throwing tantrum in the car, like, spat the dummy. But at that point, there's a real moment where I realized, fuck, I can, like, it was just like, I was so young then too, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I was like, man, I can go do, like, I had more money than most adults. And lo and behold, I was just like, fuck, I can do whatever I want. Like, obviously my dad and that took it off me and used it for school and put it into an account for me, but not all of it though. Actually, I did barter with them and I was like, motherfuckers, you ain't I earned this money. I think I did buy push bikes and shit like that, but that was like how I grew up. And I always had a job as a kid, as a whole kid. And I remember going to the sharing sheds with my dad and he'd rock up and, back in them days, okay, cool, you bring a couple of workers, like a rousey as you'd call it. We broke up and the contractor, the guy that owned the cocky, as you'd call him, out on the shed would be like, oh, it's got 2 kids here. Like, you can't have those kids. Like, they don't, like, you have to pay them child wages. And my old man was like, you ain't fucking doing that. You pay these kids what they're worth. If they do a man's work for the day, you pay them a man's wage. So I remember going through that as like, in that period where I was about 12 to like kind of 15 after that, I was off. I didn't even, no one really asked me. By then I'd kind of been around enough. I knew exactly, I rocked up, did my thing. And I was a lot better than most others as well. So it didn't matter by then. No one ever questioned me. I could work my ass off. But yeah, that was like how I started. And then the next craziest thing was when I used to work on school holidays as well, especially when I got into high school. A lot of the times, like out in Longridge, I got a job, right? And, whatever the school holidays, 2 to 3 weeks, I'd be out there. And it's just really weird because like, that was just norms to me out there. So what would happen, right? And I told, one of the bros, Ethan, yesterday about this, how I used to get into the pub, how I used to like, live my life. And so at the end of the shed, right, you get cut out the shed, especially when you're in Longridge, everyone gets a check or you get some cash at the end of the day, right? And then what happens is the contractor, whoever it is, if we're going to be late back in the town, and let's say if we're not going to get there before the bank shuts, they'd ring the bottle and say, hey, make sure you got some cash for the boys to cash their checks. So if you didn't make the bank, you'd drive back to town. And usually I would drive a lot of the times because I didn't have a license. And the name of the game was, hey, you're a young kid, cops pull us up, you ain't got no license to lose, so it's all good. So here I am. I was like 15, 16, maybe, 16. And so I used to just drive home. Everyone would be drinking, boozing up. And I would get us home. And then I would roll up into the bottle and pull up. And obviously I would have a check. So I would cash my check at the bottle, and then I would also get a carton of rum. That was just my thing. But back then, because they were used to me then, that's how I used to get in. And I was like, okay, cool. I did get kicked out a lot too, FYI. That just didn't work all the time. But back then, that's how I used to get into the front bar. And once you got into the front bar, you were sweet. And I knew if you went there early in the afternoon, right, like how I did, you in the country, right? So this is probably not so much out there, but back then, let's say if you had $50 and you brought a beer, right, bang, your stash, your money was always on the bench. It's just like a tab. So once I had a tab there, it was all good. I could stay there and drink because no one was ever going to get at me or kick me out because I'd be like, yeah, okay, beer, bang, and they'll just take it out of your tab. And you could leave your money on the table back then days too. Your money was always on the table. Some old dudes, if you're old enough, you'll know this, but back then, a full bar, a round bar could be as long as I want. There'd be stacks of cash and wallets sitting on the bench. So you could just order a beer. Barman would take whatever they wanted, whatever they needed to out of your stash. And it was just an honesty system. No one ever fucked around. But that was my first, I guess that's an intro of where I started in my career as as an entrepreneur. And I started very young, where I just knew if I worked and I showed up, I could make money. And it just seemed super simple to me at the time, because I had more money than most dudes, and I was still earning $1,000. That was 20 years ago, in cash too. They used to give me cash, which is even cooler. But people would always ask, what did you spend? As I got older, yes, obviously I was drinking, partying, but I was just hanging out with adults. I never really hung out with a lot of kids, and I guess that was a real shock to me when I started, meeting a lot of people out of that, internal kind of circle as I grew up. And it taught me a lot about how to deal with people, how to work with people, conversate, get reads on people really well, because I just always grew up with adults. That's where I met, as I got older and started talking to, other kids and stuff like that. And yeah, I had a job at McDonald's. And I was like, what the fuck? What do you do there? How much do you get paid? And back then, they were getting paid $200. And I was like, what the hell? That's shit. That's bogus. But yeah, environment, very open environment out there, very real. There's, everyone's drinking, boozing up, drugs out there. Maybe not so much then as much as they are now, but that was my first taste of cool, I can work hard, make some money. And that's what I guess really ignited and started off my journey in this space. And after that, I was just always getting after it. There's definitely times and periods throughout, my teenage years and as my, early 20s where things dipped off and didn't go so great. But at that young gun age, I always just knew that hey, I wanted to always push myself and do better and try to, I guess, push the mark. I always just have this hunch on my shoulder, and I was like, I'm never going back to this shearing sheds ever again. And, in my younger years, I didn't like it. I had this, I was like, fuck that place. But really, when I look back on it now, it was one of the best foundations I could have ever grown up in. It taught me so much about work ethic, people, and understanding, I guess, people just in general, business, everything was handshake deal out there. Just shake your hand, that's this much, it's that much. It ain't no bullshit. There ain't no, it's all real straight down the line. That's just how it was. Everyone was honest and to the point on a lot of things. And that's where I had a lot of troubles when I come to the Gold Coast, because I was like, it ain't like that. It's a very shady kind of bullshit stuff that goes on in when I got here. It was, I used to that. I had a little bit of adjusting to go. That's how I got into entrepreneurship. Working in the shearing sheds, pressing bales when I was 12, 13 years old. Got $6,000 as a young 13-year-old kid. And just thought, shit, man, this life is for me. I can do whatever I want. And then I guess from there, I'll try to explain what happened after that. Obviously, I went to school in a place called St. Brennan's College. I was fortunate enough to go to a school there. Fucking, they loved me there, but I hated that place. I tried to get kicked out so many times. They knew exactly what I was trying to do. Grew up in that kind of culture. We'll tell that story another day, because there's some other shit I want to get onto, and I'm not going to bore you guys. Went from there, went down to Brisbane, played football in Redcliffe for a little bit. This is a story, actually. I'll tell you, this is a story. We can have this one, and I'll just slide this one and keep it short. So I went to schoolies, right, Gold Coast. Obviously, it was my first experience on the Gold Coast, right? What happened was, got here, and I was supposed to go to football in Redcliffe straight after here, right? That house and everything ready for us, which was amazing. I've been here, and just imagine schoolies, right? As every schoolies, crazy, week, no sleep, freaking going all out. So I left here, right, and someone come and picked us up. I can't even remember who it was, it's all a big blur. Anyway, I rocked up back in Redcliffe, walked into the house that we're staying at. I had no bed. The other families had, their mum and dad had been there and they'd got beds and shit set up. I just literally had a bag of schoolies clothes, a backpack that I had, and it had all these dirty, just alcohol stinging clothes. And I remember I was just so distraught. I just threw it all on the ground, tipped it all out, and kind of created a pillow, turned my fan on, and just went to sleep. But it was just so wild back then that like everyone's mum and dad was there and they were like, they had this cool bed set up for them and they like had their washing done. I was just like, I'm busted, like I'm going to sleep, pushed all my shit on the ground, worked my way up there too. That was a funny thing. My Redcliffe journey was really funny. I remember, I used to have to ride to work there. It was the most fucked up thing, actually. I used to work like an hour away on a push bike ride. So what would happen was I would get on my push bike, ride all the way to work, which was like an hour. It was just fucking, and an hour on a push bike tour was a long way away. I was in Deception Bay. If anyone knows Redcliffe, Deception Bay, I used to have to ride that shit. Anyway, ride back from there. I'd get off the bike in the afternoon, jump straight into preseason training and go for it. And that was my life for so long and it sucked. But it taught me a lot too, because that was one of those things where I realized really quickly is like, I do not want to play football. Football is not for me. I didn't enjoy it. The hierarchy and the bullshit in there I was like, I'm out, done. Went back to Rockhampton. I started my carpentry apprenticeship there. I'm very fortunate for Noel and Ross Kavanagh. Actually, they had a big part to play in the help me out and help me get started in the carpentry industry. And that was a bit where I could really hone my skills. One, you could work your ass off all day, which suited me because had so much energy and I was so active and I was just trying to, it was really good. It was around manly kind of dudes. It wasn't like a shit environment. It was very similar to kind of the construction shearing industry in many ways. And then obviously did my apprenticeship. That took a lot longer than what it did. There's a whole bunch of shit that went on there anyway, but I won't go. Then I went to Gladstone, right? And there's a funny story of how I even got to Gladstone. I'll shout out to the guy, James Deacon. He actually had a big part to play in this, right? I was at the house that I was living at the time, and it's 5 a.m. in the morning. We'd been, drinking up all night, doing our thing. One of the boys decided, hey, we're going to put the roof on. There's a patio there. Anyway, Deco was there. I was there. It's early morning. We're doing our thing. And so we jump up and start putting this roof on, right? And when we're up there, he's like, shit, you're pretty good at this. Do you want a job? And, we'd been up all night drinking, partying, doing everything. And I was like, no, fuck off. Anyway, long and behold, we did the roof, finished it. He rings me like, I don't know, whatever day it was, like middle of the week. He's like, hey man, you want a job? I think he's giving me X amount of dollars. He was like, there might have been $32 or something back there. And I said, no, fuck off. Anyway, rings me back on Friday. He's like, hey, you want a job? And at that time, I had a few personal things go on. And it was just divine timing. And I was like, yeah, fucking right. I need a job. Like, I needed to get out of that town. It was not serving me. People that I was around were not serving me. So Deco and Danielle, just a shout out to them as a little quick hint. They actually helped me a lot back then. I went and stayed with them, lived with them for ages. Me and Deco were working together. And the first day, right, I got onto the job site. I was there, right, and no one knew that I knew Deco. Deco was actually the boss. His brother owned the business, so he was like the manager. Anyway, we get up on the roof, right, and he's giving everyone like a pre-speak and, talking and everything. And I'm kind of standing behind him, and I'm like, shit, I'm going to test these motherfuckers out and see, because it was my first time on an environment like that. And I'm giving him the finger behind his back, right? And then we get home that night, and they're all in front of me. See me giving the finger behind his back, but Deco's my bro. Like, we've been knowing each other for a long time. So I get home that night, and this is early in the morning. I was like, anyone say anything about on the roof today? And he was like, no. And I was like, I was actually giving you the finger behind your back. I wanted to see if I could trust these motherfuckers, if they were going to dob me in or not. So after that, I knew I was in the right spot, and I was like, cool, bro. I like this job. I want to be here. And I ended up going all in. A couple of years go by anyway, and I got to this point where I was just fucking over it. Hey, I was like, man, I shouldn't be here. I'm not gonna, I'd kind of outgrown my space. I was very good at that. I'd get into a business or company and I'm just like, how do I be the boss? How do I get to the top? How do I do this? I was never gonna ever stay in a company. Long and behold, I was like, fuck it, I'm going. Had a run in with one of the guys. I actually bogged a down in the back of the fucking sticks somewhere. Anyway, I was driving around and it got stuck there and I had to leave it there. And we had an argument about me leaving the Bobcat there. Anyway, that was a tipping point for me. I told him to fuck off, and I had an argument with him on the phone. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I grabbed my shit. I had my laptop. I had my phone and the car and shit that they had for me. And I walked in and I was like, I just remember it really clear. And I was like, put it on the desk, and he was like, what are you doing? He's like, just typing away. I'm like, I'm out of here, brother. Like, keep your job. Anyway, he's looked at me. He looked dead at me, and he's like, you don't ever think you can come back here? I was like, but I ain't ever coming back here. I said, just, you won't ever see me again. And from that day onwards, I literally went, this is how little I knew about business then. I was like, in that mind, I was like, I'm starting my business today. And you know what the first thing I went and did? I went and brought a stupid ass blue laptop and got a logo. And I was like, yeah, I'm a business owner. Let's go. Literally, that's what I did. I left the job that day. I went straight from the work site, straight to Harvey Norman in Gladstone, and brought this stupidest blue. I didn't even know anything about laptops back then. It was just blue. I like blue. Amazing. Great. Here, give me that laptop, bro. Went home that night. I lived in this house by myself. I had no fucking furniture or anything like that. I just had like I had a stool. Actually, didn't even have two stools. One black stool that I picked up from work, and I was sitting at this bench. I had my computer. I was like, yeah, this is the dream. I'm going to keep going. Got on some website. They made me a logo. Hex Construction was born with a stupid blue laptop and a logo that day. I thought I had cracked it. I knew everything about business. Anyway, I literally just grabbed whatever shit I had and I left that place the next day. And I at the time, whatever I didn't take stayed there in that house, and I gave my lease to another lady. There's like an actual couch in there. Whatever didn't fit in my car didn't come with me. And that's when I rocked up to the Gold Coast, and I was like, yep, this is me. I knew no one here, by the way. I knew no one. I never started a business. I had no mentors. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. I just knew that I had a dream to do something and make something of myself, whether it was a name of myself. And I had this like urge always in me. I was like, shit, I'm here no matter what. I ain't going to die. And there's one thing about me, I don't know if I blame it on being stubborn, but I always had this attitude where I was like, I ain't fucking giving up. I ain't quitting. And that's just been this like little voice that's in me no matter what, in everything that I do. Sometimes serve me, sometimes not. Being stubborn is amazing in instances when, people give up, and others and then sometimes it may not serve you, because whatever does not bend can also break as well. Being stiff on everything is not always great, but it served me, especially in those earlier days. But yeah, never give up, never die attitude always served me well. Rocked up on the Gold Coast, and really, I just was out partying, shaking hands. The thing I was like, shit, I can go out, have beers with people and meet people. And that's how I started, working. And shout out to a partner at that time that helped me get into the body corporate. She worked in body corporate. So if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have got started in that space as well. But I'll fast forward a little bit, because there's a big bit there, normal Gold Coast shit, young kid from the bush, growing up in the bush, come to the Gold Coast. I'm like, amazing. Everything's open, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday night. You can go anywhere, any night of the week. I mean, I wasn't used to that. Just FYI, out in the bush and the sticks, the pub's open, not all the time. Nothing's open most of the time, because it fucking sucks. And I guess that was where, when I first had my construction businesses, right, I got a little bit, I got into, that's where my first love for systems and operations, really kind of found it up, because I had these softwares and technologies and stuff like that. And I was just fascinated. I was like, this is amazing. And all the big businesses that I'd met and people that I'd met that had really good construction businesses had really good systems and operations. And that's where I kind of started geeking out on this stuff. And I was like, shit, I need to get better at this. I need to get better at that. And then also I started in websites. And this is how I got started in websites. I always did, I guess, maybe freelance tech stuff in the background. I never really ever told anyone I was doing it or showed anyone. I always was on my computer fucking trying to build websites, trying to look at software, trying to understand them, and just I was always fascinated in computers and how everything operated. The reason why I got into even building websites is I had a website guy rip me off, right? And when my construction was my first ever, and he did it, and I was like, cool, whatever, bro, let's do the thing. And he built it. It actually wasn't too bad. But he had these management fees. And he was like, oh no, this, fucking DNSs and all this, like all the just bullshit at the time. And I'm like, I know bullshit. I'm like, bro, I ain't getting no more money. Like you're charging me this stupid ass fees. You ring me every month and say that this is down. Every week, you're just collecting cash off me, but always threatening that, oh, the website's not going to work. It's down because we don't have the domains. Fuck them, whatever he was saying at the time. I knew he was speaking shit. Anyway, shut my website down because I was like, I ain't paying you, man. Fuck you. I and because this guy had he had a business, a legitimate business, and it was in Southport. So I'm like, fuck this. I got the address, and I was like, I rocked up at the spot. I was like, I remember jumping out of my car, having my tradie in my trailer. I was like, this guy better turn on my fucking website. And I, had my tradie, rocked up at the front, parked it on the street illegally, fucking put the hazards on, blocking all the shit off at the front of his setup. And I went up to the door. But there was no offers there. There was no. I'm like, I'm gonna grab this motherfucker and make him turn back on my website. And yeah, long and behold, it was a bogus one. He didn't even live there. No one had even seen him there. I went back there later on. I was like, hey, is this dude in this office? Like, this is his name, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he's got his address here and so forth. So if you are that guy, fuck you. But anyway, actually, it's a good thing because I was like, after that, I was just like, I'm not doing that again. I started building my own websites. Should have just focused on my work. But anyway, that's how I got into website development. And that was like kind of a really good way where it pushed me into into the tech space. And I just always freelance from then, building as much shit as I could. I just was always, at home at night time. People probably thought I was doing quotes, but really I was fucking around on my computer, building stuff that I enjoyed, editing videos, like whatever I could do. Go straight from there, right? A few years go on, and I really had this a lot of moments where this is a specific moment that I remember, and I had to. There was a moment where I realized, I have to change something. I was in Miami, Gold Coast. I'd just broken up with my partner, right? I roll out of the back door, like I just told her, you can't stand, blah blah blah, whatever. Goodbye. And I sat back out, I sat out on the stairs, and I remember I was just sitting there in the back, and I was just like sitting on the back stairs, and I was like, you're in that moment, you're like, okay, everything just changed. Like it's an uncomfortable situation. And I stopped for a minute. And at that stage, I'd had like, 3 consistent, or 3 partners that are all around the same, they lasted about the same amount of time. And I thought to myself, okay, why did they not work? And it was at that moment I realized that the reason that they had not worked, they all had the exact same reason. They didn't work out. It was me. I was a stubborn motherfucker. It was my way or the highway. There was no bending. There was no nothing. And I literally just had this like pin drop moment. And I was like, shit, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I was like, fuck. And it was at that stage I just had to, I guess, bite my tongue and swallow my ego there for a bit and really just have some self-reflection. It's like, man, I'm the one. I've fucked up all 3 of these relationships because of my shitty behaviors and ignorance and understanding of myself. Anyway, decided from then on, that pushed me into a space where for the next like 3 to 4 years, I essentially, obviously businesses and stuff were all going and stuff, but I pretty much started other journeys, like quests on the way, side quests were everywhere. I was doing tech, I was doing, my construction business was running. I had all this shit going on. And I went on this, like, I guess a spiritual journey and understanding myself, which I guess eventually grew into men's medicine, which is a community out there today. Mental health is still holding the torch out there, thriving. Essentially what I did was for the next 3 to 5 years was, really reinvent myself and dive into my psyche and the understanding of, who I am and what I'm about. And for me, I was so passionate about it, and I'm glad that I made this choice at the time because I was sat for a long time and thought about this, and I reflected on it in a way where the business never went out of me. The entrepreneurial person never died. And I thought to myself, okay, it was always there in the background, but I looked at a lot of people's journeys. I was always like analytical, looking at people's like how they go and they get to like that 35-year mark and they've had, they get divorced, they start having all these relationship problems. So I was like, oh, I'm heading in that direction. That's exactly what I'm heading for right now. And I'm like, I can keep making dough, but I was like, okay, these guys are making paper. They got all the money and, they need, they got all, like, cars, houses and shit, and they're having these problems. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to have those problems. I don't want, I want to have a nice relationship. I want to have a nice family. I want to be able to understand myself, not have all like, and I was always speaking to these dudes and I was like, shit, man, that doesn't sound that great. You got all this money, you got these businesses and stuff, and I'm like, you're having all these personal home problems. So it was at that stage I was like, fuck it, let's just do this. Went all in for, as much as I could and just reinvented myself. I had my personality and I killed that motherfucker so many times and just kept reinventing myself and understanding, like, as best I possibly could, as much work on myself as I possibly could. Lo and behold, I'm here now and it worked out. And I am so grateful and thankful for that. So that is a story we'll get into another day about men's medicine and the community and the good work and the goodwill we did over there. And this was a real, coming out of that business was one of the biggest lessons I had. People hating, people not liking you. And for me, I got a lot of hate in that business. A lot of people were, fucking talking shit, saying whatever they were saying. And I was like, I just couldn't fathom it. I was sitting there for so long with the amount of people that we had come up to us, before, after events, we do our events and stuff like that. Speaking events, like day-to-day full event with people, and the amount of people that will come up and like literally give us a hug and like, hey bro, I was gonna fucking kill myself before this, or like just like today, this morning, I wasn't even gonna come here this morning, I was gonna fucking top myself. And that was I'm like, shit, we're out here actually, changing a lot of people's lives, and I'm still getting hate for that. I'm like, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, so that's what helped me in the business a lot after that, because I'm like, if someone's going to hate on me for going out there, trying my best to make sure I provide a community for men and women where they feel safe and where they can express themselves and grow and do better in their life and not take their life, I'm sure as fuck they're going to hate on you for starting a business and trying to do better for yourself. At that stage, I was like, you know what? Jam it in your ass. Fuck you guys. I'm going to do whatever I want, however I want to do it, whenever I want to do it. And that attitude has just rolled with. I've always kind of had that attitude, but from then on, it just was like another pin drop moment. I was like, doesn't matter what you do. I was literally doing something of such service to human people that I still copped it. But anyway, long behold, it was an amazing journey, that one as well. But that was a really good catalyst for myself. And then from there, that's when, back to the story where I started to get into operations and understand people's businesses, and I kind of got stuck, and, I was always coming into, and that was what I did for men's medicine. I did all the back end operations. I loved it. It was my jam. I was there, and we were scaling, we were growing, we were going everywhere. So that was, that was my journey through there anyway. Then I went through I tried so many other businesses. There was a long side where I just was in that age bracket where I didn't think that I was getting old. I was like, I'm still young. I hadn't hit my 30s yet. 30s is really my prime. And I was willing enough to try, I guess, essentially a lot of other businesses that a lot of them fucking failed, that's for sure. But I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about who I am and what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And that was, I think that's one of those things where a lot of people are afraid to go out there and fuck it up and fail. And that was always just my thing. I'm like, just start before you're ready. Just go out there, give it a crack, give it a go. And I just always had this fearlessness about it, because I'm like, man, I'm this young kid from the bush that grew up in the shearing sheds, and I come to the Gold Coast. If even me getting to this spot and getting to this, being able to live here, I live in Palm Beach, like an amazing place on the beachfront. Even if I was to die tomorrow, I'll be like, shit, man. And I was down looking at myself, I'll be proud of myself for even getting this far and being able to create a lifestyle, for myself and my future family, and be able to, I guess, get to where I am. I'm well presented, people respect me, and I'm living a good, I'm an example of what I teach people and what I want other people to be like as well. And I have good standards, I have good morals, a good character. And that's what I wish to pass on, not only to you guys, but everyone else I meet in person as well. Those good, strong quality traits. But we'll skip a few years there. And then that's where I got into, there's a bunch of shit that happened in between there. But if you've been a long listener to it, I actually started this podcast in that process, in that gap as well. We won't tell all the story because we're going to save some. But in that period as well, that's where I always started this podcast. It was called If You Don't Know, Now You Know. And if you're an old listener of mine, thanks very much for it. I appreciate you guys for always coming back and supporting me. Please show me as much love as you possibly can. That was one that happened. And at the time I was living with Lynn O'Holler and we're doing Chef Lynn O'Holler, actually. Is your name. And he come back one day and I'm in this garage. I'm just fucking got all my tools out. I'm building. And he's like, what are you doing, bro? Anyway, I'm like, I'm building a podcast studio. I built a podcast. I built a room inside a room at my old garage. And I just started. At the time, I was like, I like speaking to people. And this is why I came back to do this now. And I sat on this for a while on the fence. I was like, what does it need to look like? And does it need to be, producing cash flow and stuff like that? And I was like, I actually don't give a fuck about that. I actually really like hearing other people's stories and trying to relate it to you guys, and so you guys can maybe get some value and information out of it. And then also life of a businessman. This is where we'll wrap this up, and the life of a businessman, what this actually is and why you guys should even pay any attention to me. And we're going to go into believing in yourself from day dot. So I started recording Life of a Businessman 9 years ago now. When that period where I told you where I'd left Gladstone earlier on and came to the Gold Coast, that's where I started filming myself like this on camera. I was like, yep. Talking back then it was also to break a big fear about speaking on camera. I had this I couldn't speak on camera. I don't know. I listen to my voice. It sounds stupid. I can't say the words. Am I adding value? Am I doing this? And I was like, fuck it, we just got to kick this off. And I started talking about business lessons, life lessons, and good deeds. 3 things I'm passionate about. Learning about business, learning about life, and also giving back. Giving back is one of those things. So I just had a moment of a deed that I'd done a while ago that was like a little bit dangerous, but touch on that in a minute. But there was a deed I did one time, and because I've always done, so I'll try to do as many good deeds. I don't ever film, put them up just because I'm like, fuck, I ain't that dude. But I was in Redcliffe one night, and I had my partner at the time with me, and we'd just been out for like a kind of like a family dinner thing. I love doing, and it was 9:30 at night, and I need to do my good deed for the day, because a good deed that day keeps the bad people away. I'm rolling home, right, and I've been playing the pokies, don't always gamble, but going through Redcliffe, and there's this area. It's not the best area. And I see this guy going through the bin. He's like full head down in the bin. It's late at night. And I'm like, fuck it. Pull over, turn around, go back. And I jumped my partner at the time. Was like, well, like, what? There's who knows? Motherfucker could have been anyone. And I jump out, right? And he's like looking at me. I'm like, I roll out. He's pulled his head out of the bin. And he's this big fucking dude anyway. And I'm like, what's up, brother? And I'm like, I grabbed some money because I won some money. And I gave him, I had 50 in my hand. And he was he was shocked. I was like, what are you doing, brother? I said, it's been a good day for me. I've been blessed today, brother. And I gave him this $50. And he must have thought it was $5. And because he had this little torch. He was like, I remember him looking at it. And that was one of those ones where I maybe shouldn't have done, because he was a bit of a sketchy dude. And I was like, oh, maybe not. But anyway, that was just a little moment where I was like, well, maybe that was not one of those deeds. But he was very thankful, though. I remember I jumped back in the car and I was looking at him, and he was like sussing it out, and he was happy. So that's a good deed, and that's what I do. So, but the business lessons, the life lessons, and the good deeds, I've recorded those things. What I will do for you guys is I'm going to narrate them. And the reason why I've recorded these videos is I always found this correlation where I was trying to relate to people that were in far better financial situations, business situations than myself. And they may be on stage, they may be they may be here right now speaking to you. And I was like, fuck, I couldn't relate as much as what I was just trying to bridge that gap, because when you're in that especially startup bit, it's hard for you to see them in spots where they were not doing, I guess, that great. So I just decided, one, I'm going to record myself right now, because no one knows who the fuck I am. They don't want to listen to who I am. And the advice that I was giving myself then on lessons and shit was probably shit house. But it correlates directly to certain people that are in certain situations because we're all in different stages of the journey. And I was like, had this thought and this motion of, if I can relate to someone when they're in that moment, right? Let's say me 8, 9 years ago, and I'm saying, hey, this is my business lessons, this is my life lessons, and this is what I would do. And that's what I was doing. I was giving myself advice. And then what happened was the story and the thought was, if someone else is at that start of their journey, they're going to be able to relate to me because they can see a little bit of me in them at that time, right? And the advice that I was giving myself right then was probably not that good. Actually, I know it's not good because I listened to them. It's fucking shit. But they're going to be able to relate to me. And if they're able to relate to me, they might listen to the advice that I'm giving myself now, which would, I guess, increase their chances of getting out of that situation a lot quicker. And that's the story of life of a businessman. That's the modalities behind it. That's the reason behind it, because we're all at different levels. And what I'm looking to do is to relate to people that are up and coming. I'm like, how do I take you from, very start a business, no money, whatever it may be, to, earning your dream income as quickly as you possibly can in a way where you can relate to me and see me in my vulnerable states and advice I was giving myself. Because advice, if I had advice I'm giving myself right now, back then, would have fucking took a lot less time, that's for sure. But that's part of the learning, and that's the story, and that's the journey, and that's life of a businessman. But that is going to be 50 minutes of your guys' beautiful life. If you like this, please make sure that you try share it as much as you possibly can. I don't have any sponsors. I ain't selling you fuck all on here. I'm providing value. I'm sharp. I've got some gun guests coming on. It's actually been a little bit hard for me to choose who's coming on first, because I'm more interested in speaking to them as well, because they provide me with so much value. And I'm like, holy shit, I want to have these conversations with you on camera. So if there's anyone you can suggest as well, please let me know. But also people that, I will have people reach out. And just FYI, if you are shit and you ain't about it, don't ask me, because I'm going to tell you to beat it. All right. It's part of me not getting any duds on here that ain't about that lifestyle. If they're going to be preaching fucking living a lifestyle, breathwork, if they're about, their marriage and relationship, and they're coming on here speaking about that, they best be about those things. All right. So that's my promise to you guys. People that are coming on here, I've vetted them out. They ain't no Instagram bums out there promoting bullshit, pretending to live lifestyle, and then on the weekend they're doing coke, getting all fucked up and doing dumb shit. All right. People that I bring on here, I'll be about that lifestyle, whatever that is they're promoting, and that's it. And they will be giving you the value because they're about that lifestyle. That's my promise to you guys. But that is my intro to you about life of a businessman. Now you know a little bit about me. Now you know who Mr. Heka is, aka Chocolate Daddy. They're going to cut that out, hopefully. But if not, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.